What the hell is going on there, YouTube? So, this whole situation with Shane Dawson. Let's talk about that. So, I've been how could I put this? Not a content creator of any real significance, but I've been fucking with YouTube and I've been watching videos and channels and shit, right? For like, I don't know, going on 10 years. I was a fan and a subscriber of Shane Dawson's channel. My kids are subscribed to Shane Dawson's channel. I was following Shane Dawson back in the day when like mainstream, like the content, like Maker Studio first dropped, and like you had Totally Sketch and all that. Yeah, I go back to Shane to those days. And yeah, like he was making some shock value, cringy ass, bad taste content, but here's the thing. For me, it comes down to intent. And it also comes down to either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. See, I don't agree with the idea of cancel culture for one, and I definitely don't agree with the idea of muzzling comedians. You can have shitty comedy. I'm not saying his shit was just knee-slapping hilarious and he was a genius content creator. A lot of his shit frankly sucked, but it hit a niche that he was catering to, the cringy-ass preteen, teen Nick market. That's what he was catering to. And being there in California, y'all cannot sit here and tell me that the entertainment industry in general, but especially in like the New York and Florida and California area, you can't tell me that there's some extremely pedophilic and predatory shit going on. Like all the shit that, went down with that dude that made those Nickelodeon shows, like Victorious and Drake and Josh and all that. Dan Schneider, I think the dude's name was. Like, Shane was making content back when that dude had a platform. Not to mention Weinstein doing his shit in his heyday and all that other fuck shit that was going on in the culture that were kind of like open secrets that was just the way of doing business. You can't tell me that then doesn't like trickle down. And if it was so fucked up, and if we need to cancel him and he needs to pay and get his comeuppance, alright, bet. Where was this 10 years ago? Where was that at? Where was this energy back then? Social media and all these platforms existed, so where was that energy then? And what's more interesting is Shane, when he was doing some really, really wild shit, like his podcast that was on Full Screen, that is owned, or at least at the time anyway, was owned by AT&T. No one was going after AT&T and trying to boycott AT&T for platforming his problematic content. There wasn't no word about it. But now, all of a sudden, it's like the biggest issue and biggest like talking point ever. It's just really interesting. I don't condone the blackface and all that shit. I don't think it's funny. But at the end of the day, let the free market decide if someone is going to be able to be successful or not. Like, if enough people don't fuck with this shit and don't think it's funny, then he'll either have to course correct and cater to what is funny, or he won't have a platform. But the idea of people needing to go in and censor, nah, man. I'm not with that. The idea of being offended, being seen as a virtue, that's a big problem with our society. Just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. Some of the most brilliant comedic minds of our time were extremely offensive. Extremely offensive for their time. And would still be considered extremely offensive now. I mean, for crying out loud, George Carlin. But if you actually sit there and break down, like, what he's saying and what he's talking about, dude's dropping facts. Those aren't just jokes. He's dropping some actual knowledge. Now, I'm not saying Shane is the next George Carlin. Not by any means. But if we deplatform people because they said something or did something that we found offensive, then what's going to end up happening is the marketplace of ideas, if you will, is going to become completely sanitized, where you can't have free speech because you don't want to offend this person, you don't want to offend that person. I mean, for crying out loud, Jenna Marbles, which I know, like, everyone's been saying, oh, well, she's such a great person. The fact that she was crying her ass off and just felt so bad because she offended someone. Like, it's one thing if you had malice in your heart and you specifically went out to say something fucked up and offensive to someone, and they took offense to that and it hurt them, and then you look back on it and you're like, well, shit, I shouldn't have said that. Like, I didn't need to go that hard on him. I feel bad about that. That's one thing. But then again, like, at the end of the day, if you feel offended by that, that's on you. That is your place to decide what you're then going to do with that. And that took me a while to understand. I mean, look at me. I'm a big fat dude. Like, I need to get my health together. I need to lose some weight, and I'm working on that. But you know, it is what it is. I've been roasted throughout my life. I'm freaking almost 37, and I've been roasted mercilessly for my weight, for the fact that I'm a big guy and got man boobs. I've had people grab on my man boobs and everything. Like, I've had that. And I would get really offended and hurt and cry and depressed and want to kill myself and all that. But, like, people told me back when I was a kid that when you're getting bullied, the bullied's words, they only have the power that you give them. And now, the whole anti-bullying campaign, stop bullying, and this cancel culture, and being offended being a virtue, yo, words do have power. But at the end of the day, they only have the power that you give them. So if someone says something that offends you, then you need to kind of break that down and be like, all right, why am I being offended by this? Why is this offensive to me? Is what they're saying objectively true? Am I offended because they pointed out an uncomfortable truth about myself? If it's not true, it'd be like, all right, well, do I value what this person says? Am I offended because there's someone whose opinion I value, who means a lot to me, and they're saying something hurtful about me, and I'm offended by that? If the answer is no, then it's like, all right, what they're saying isn't true. I don't value what they're saying, like their take and their opinion. So why am I giving this power and weight? Now, granted, it does become, another level of an issue if it's someone who's in a position of power and authority. But again, it's not taking offense and using the fact that what they said offends you is why you need to tear them down. Like, that's petty, and that doesn't work. Like, Donald Trump is easily the most offensive president we have ever had. He has said tremendously offensive things. He has done tremendously offensive things. If being offended was an effective weapon to use to take down the people who caused you to be offended, if that was an effective weapon to use, then why has that not dismantled Donald Trump? Because it's not an effective weapon to use. Because when you're offended, you're galvanizing other people who also can join your cause and take offense and whatnot. But like, people that aren't on your cause are not going to be rocking with you. And if anything, it'll cause like further division. Because like, if they're not offended by what you're offended by, you're going to look like a clown to them, and they're not going to take you serious. You don't win allies and you don't win hearts and minds by wielding your offended feelings as a weapon. Like, you look at the massive impact that Dr. Martin Luther King had. When he was going and speaking, was he saying, these people offend me, I am very offended by these people? He wasn't, was he? It's not saying that the pain that you feel isn't valid. And it's not excusing people who do offensive and screwed up things. But we live in a country that values liberty and freedom of speech. So, if you want liberty and freedom of speech, you gotta take everything that comes with that. You gotta take everything that person's liberty and that person's freedom of speech, they might say or do some shit that you don't fuck with. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's their right to say that. Now you can have a dialogue and, sit down and try to hash out the issues, try to figure out like why it is that they feel the way they do, and they're being offended, or rather they're saying things that are offending you and acting in an offensive way. Some of it could be, their own internal prejudices or biases or something of that nature. Or they could be taking the piss and being, a tryhard and wanting to say some offensive shit for shock value because they're losers that need attention. And when you get offended and give them that attention, you're giving them exactly what they need. You give them that dopamine hit, and just like any other addict, they're going to keep coming and keep coming back for it. Like, there's people who, they get their jollies off on that. By getting people triggered and getting them all in their feelings. Bro, that is our president's entire MO, fam. That's how Donald Trump got, like, everybody on his side that voted for him. And that's how, like, he still has people that unironically support him and that are gonna vote for him in this election. I am definitely not among those people. But yo, this cancel culture, offended, PC butthurt culture, man, it ain't it. And I promise you it will not get the radical systemic change that is needed. That most progressive-minded people that want to see actual progress happen in our society and to move forward as a people and like as a human race and whatnot. Like, there's way more people that are on that kind of time than are on that bullshit offended kind of, offensive kind of time. But like, that's not how we're going to get there. That's not how we win. But yeah, that's my take on it. Y'all stay awesome.